Hello, everyone. This is your old girl, Fedora Chick, with a pre recorded. This is the first time I'm pre recording something in StreamYard, trying it out. Honestly, because my computer will take forever filming it on through my webcam and then trying to upload it through iMovie. And it's just a mess. So I'm hoping this will be an easier way of going about this. Yeah, it's just honestly, this is a topic I kind of feel strongly about. And I am pretty much annoyed these days, even though I'm bits and pieces trying to stay in the loop. As many know, I'm in a lot of pain these days due to my health situation. And yeah, so, anyways, onward. Plus, the other reason why I'm not going live is I am reading off a script because I don't want to forget any of my points. You know how my dyslexic mind goes. I get distracted and then I forget the point of the whole thing, and then it just goes off the rails. So here we go. Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my dyslexic brain, so it's scripted. Now, it should be noted that this video is not for the attic or the bodega or Sam and Yaba. They're too far gone. They're hopeless cases who will never, ever get this. This is more for the otherwise reasonable audience who seem to not grasp why taking legal action for so-called internet BS some of the time is not only reasonable for your own personal well-being and safety, but that of your family, but even a necessary remedy. Too often, again, aside from the obvious suspects, I hear that these lawsuits are taking up the court's time for nothing and other BS like this. Too many say just log off and ignore, problem solved. All well and good. However, it usually solves nothing. The Bodega have proven this, the Attic have proven this, Sam and Yaba have proven this. In fact, more often than not, the more you ignore them, the further they escalate. And that's not just them. That's typical of any bully online or in real life. Yeah, dare I see the word bully, right? But I don't know what else to call it. Yeah. So there it is. And I'm going to talk about why in this video. I will also talk about my own background briefly, which some of you who have followed me for years already know, but I doubt many of my new audience knows. So we'll go over this briefly. Law and technology, basically, pertaining specifically to social media. I will also express some of my own humble opinions, the mistakes, or at least some of the mistakes that were made, according to the information I do have. Please feel free if I get anything incorrect. Many who have followed me know that I am actually a reasonable person and I am open to being corrected. And that will be, coming up. Anyways, onward. This will be not that long. I think about 15, 20 minutes. I should be done. I hope you listen to the very end. So please buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. I did a video with a similar theme in 2020 when young dumb Honeybun was still lying to us about trying to get into a med school at the time. And when Hater Nation at that time lost their ever-loving shit over Amberlynn Reed when she posted about young dumb Honeybun and probably other reactors, that them going after her constantly can affect their own educational and vocational futures. She wasn't wrong, and that's what I said in the young dumb Honeybun video. She wasn't wrong. She still isn't. I will link that video in a pinned comment below, but here's a summary, okay, because it's just an example about how all this works. It's just an example. Even though it's a very different scenario, it's how it works. It was and it remains my highest viewed video on this channel to date. So yeah, once again, I'll be repeating things I said on that video as a reminder to those who didn't catch that video 4 years ago. And yep, it will be in a pinned comment below when I'm done here. To summarize that, because it is relevant to today's topic, many all said, but Amber Lynn is a horrible person, and she did this and didn't do that, and she's horrible. Now, to an HR person or an employer or even an admissions committee at a university, that is just white noise that they ignore as irrelevant. They're busy people. They don't care about other people around, basically, unless you have to go through a security check. And yeah, they do check the company you keep. Or isn't that right, Plonka? Yeah. As I said back then, Amber Lynn Reed was not the candidate for this med school where young dumb honey bun was supposedly applying to. She was, and they only care about her internet behavior or what is found in a Google search when they search her legal government name. Med school in particular, or even nursing school or social work programs and the like, are of particular importance as those are professions where you're serving a population. The population you serve is vulnerable. You are put in a very special position of trust. Anyway, this is just an example. You can watch more about it in my video later on, which again will be in a pinned comment below. Many of you know I used to work for an organization under the province's Ministry of Health and Social Services, mainly youth protection, not as a social worker, but I provided administrative support to frontline social workers. And that would be like the CPS in the United States, kind of like the equivalent, the counterpart, if you will. I also used to serve as a union rep for our union local, for our union accreditation. I believe in the US and maybe even other parts of Canada, you refer to it as a shop steward for one wanting to understand the context here. In my role as a former union rep, I had to take seminars given by labor relations attorneys on labor laws and technology, specifically social media, when it first became a thing and legal communities in any given jurisdiction were scrambling to try to catch up with technology as it's going, as it pertains to labor relations laws. Also, my partner, who was a radio producer for over 35 years, mainly in Montreal, although he never worked in the field, he is a certified human resources professional who had schooled me over the years and continues to school me over the years. Okie dokie then. So a brief, let's see where we started from, because that's probably just as important to me anyway, as to why we are where we are today. And I will also point out a couple of mistakes that look to be, as an observer, as an outside observer, in my humble opinion, what look to be a couple of mistakes. We'll go into that. And that will be based with the knowledge and the experience I do have. Now, let's start the whole PDF thing being spouted so lightly as to come close to rendering the term meaningless, which is dangerous for actual kids at risk, kids who are in danger. Where did this originate? Who originated it? It originates with none other than the addict's very own Begsy. As some of you may recall, when Begsy really started going off the rails in late 2021, when he fell out with most of us, including yours truly, he went after, in particular, the Gaining Ground and Hussy. Started calling them both predators and PDFs, and he went in hard for them on that. Continued in that vein for several years. When we all went our separate ways, it is important to remind ourselves, at least some of us anyways. Some of us were friendly with the Bodega at that time, namely with Traffic and Columbine AK and Screechy Nietzsche when she was Columbine AK's lapdog, basically, her yes woman. Okay, we were all friendly with each other. So at that time, no, Traffic and Columbine were not going with the narrative that Hussy and Gigi were PDFs, not at that time. Only Begsy was. And it wasn't long afterwards that Klonka herself, the sugar cougar, would chime in. Yeah. So I think it is legitimate here. I think it is fair to take another look at Begsy here. Yeah. And yeah, maybe some who have been at the receiving end of all the PDF and Predator stuff maybe should be looking to Begsy as a named defendant. And those who dropped suits should reconsider going after him. And I'm going to get into the reasons why very shortly. Now, of course, at that time, Begsy was fighting with traffic for there, and he went in hard for him, calling him a PDF. But with traffic, unlike Gigi and Hussy, where there is absolutely no proof, traffic is a different sort of animal altogether, as there is actually proof out there that traffic was at best highly inappropriate with minors. For example, the video on his old original Matthew Berlinger channel, the game of Find the P, Find the Male Anatomy, with his impressionable young boys at that time. And then there were the screenshots we saw recently that, thank you, Yado, for doing the Lord's work on that Yado had posted a screenshot of Traffic's highly inappropriate interactions with male minors in gaming. I think they were gaming chats. Some chats anyway. And of course, who could forget when he told Missy Ann that he thought 15-year-old pregnant girls were hot. Yeah, who can forget that? Okay. So receipts, video clips, screenshots are all out there. They're all floating it. Hell, I'm sure even Kiwi Farms has all of it archived. Begsy went in equally hard on Hussy and Gigi simply because they had a parting of the ways. Sound familiar, anyone? See, this is why the Bodega and the Attic, they're the same in this way. Both ran their respective Discord games like a cult. You know, as that Eagles song says, you can check out, but you can never leave. Yeah. Or if you do, serious consequences come up now, don't they? Yeah, and that's for both. Anyways, I digress. Absolutely no evidence that Hussy and Gigi are PDFs and predators. It is also important to note that many out there, including no doubt Begsy, that believe that openly gay men are automatically child fondlers. I think we all know how long that frickin' stereotype still goes. And yes, gay men, openly gay men are, yeah, lesbians too, are openly subjected to hate crimes still to this very day. And people still believe this shit to this very day, including Begsy. I'm sure even Klonka does. And so do the rest of them. Yes, it is crucial that we note that Begsy started this whole mess. He started going too far off the rails without any thought to consequences, not to himself, not to those around him in his real life, certainly not to his supposed disabled kid, that's for sure, let alone the targets of his tirades to begin with, of his slanderous tirades. After all, he's never had a job to worry about, unless you can count the video store he allegedly, you gotta say allegedly, cop, stole from. Remember, to His Highness, work is too dangerous for him. Why, you may ask, is it so important that we emphasize Begsy starting this whole mess? Because when we all had a falling out with the Bodega, only then did they start following the Gigi and Hussy, our predators and PDFs. So after Begsy decided that we're no longer going to be friends with the Bodega, Mine AK was no longer Klonka's daughter that she never had. I believe that role has now gone to Screechy Nietzsche, but anyways, that's neither here nor there for the purposes of this video. Yeah. Did they start? Yes. Hell, Begsy started this mess even long before his sugar cougar did. Even she was never as bad as he was with the slanderous comments, and she was pretty bad. She was pretty bad. But Begsy was worse. He instigated it, let's be real. Then when the fallout with Sam and Yaba came in to be after the fallout with Belinda, they joined the Bodega and joined the whole Hussy and Gigi as a predator in PDF. It grew. It mushroomed. Now, while all these people are all basically sociopaths with no conscience, would it have, I gotta ask, would it have entered the realm of their feeble minds to refer to Gigi and Hussy ad nauseum as PDFs and predators? Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm inclined to believe that while they would engage in other hideous acts and insults online and in real life, perhaps, only perhaps, PDF would not have entered the realm of their feeble sociopathic narcissistic minds. Regardless, I don't think it's much of a stretch for reasonable people, especially those from the outside looking in, like, say, a judge, a member of a jury, an attorney, to make this connection. Which leads me to what I feel was the first mistake by both Gigi and Hussy, in my humble opinion. Slightly different mistakes, but similar nonetheless. If one recalls, Gigi was going to initially sue Begsy, but abandoned it. And this is something I've already told him, and I've said this publicly, so this is not a really secret. It's not a secret. I feel that was a mistake, dropping it. I honestly believe that subsequent proceedings against the rest of the riffraff in question might be easier going. Because like a question one might ask is, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this globally. This guy, Begsy Ron P. Corbin, he initiated it. Why isn't he a named defendant? Why? Yeah, he should be. Absolutely. Now, even though Begsy may not have a pot to piss in, I'll get to that later. It's still valid. Yeah. I honestly believe that subsequent proceedings might have been easier going. As to Hussy, he chose simply to go after Klonka, who, while egregious in her own right, was not as bad or as contentious as her lover boy Begsy was. Begsy should have been a named defendant as well. I see that Hussy these days has him as a named defendant now. Only time will tell if that will help them. Bottom line here, perhaps if Begsy were originally sued by either or both Hussy and Gigi, perhaps the Bodega would not have been able to run amok with the whole Predator PDF shit that they keep running with. Anyway, on to one of my bigger pet peeves du jour. I see people, again, not referring to the Bodega, the Attic, or Sam or Yaba, as mentioned, these people have no conscience. They don't want to have a conscience. It would be wasted on them. So this video is not for them, like I said. It is for those otherwise reasonable people, or at least seemingly reasonable people, who I'm seeing all over Twitter and YouTube saying this is all just internet tomfoolery and it's a waste of time to go to court and it's wasting the court's time and so on and so forth. Just log off, they say. Ignore, they say. Well, I think we can all agree it doesn't work. Not with this band of rabid hyenas. It doesn't work. Log off all you want. It doesn't stop them. In fact, it makes them escalate. Why? Because at this time there is no deterrent for them. There means no motivation for them to stop. They get no consequences. Look at why Begsy continues to play the victim. He continues to not work. He's surrounded by enablers. Imagine if Begsy were put in a position where he was by himself, and I mean really by himself, perhaps with his kid. No sugar cougar, no mother to bail him out. Nobody. No Straubs, no Meffy Beffy, no D. Higgins. Where do you think he would be? He owes 30 grand to disability, so he can't get disability for him and his kid. What he deems as too dangerous for him work. He would have no choice but to pound the pavement and find a job. Yeah. digging ditches or cleaning toilets, because otherwise he is unemployable. Let's be real. Certainly not good for a position of trust. That's for sure. But there you go. Doesn't require much trust to dig ditches or scrub toilets. You get what I mean? So this is the same thing for this whole lot. There is no motivation for them to stop. And the motivation has to be created somehow. The deterrent consequences. And this is what they call the domino effect, basically. So does this give license the next people to fall out with Hussy or Gigi or anyone else for that matter to start playing monkey see, monkey do with the attic or the bodega or Sam and Yaba? If there's no consequence, if there's no motivation, no deterrent, I think it does. I think it does. Like I said, most people don't know how, these people do not know how to behave like human beings, referring to the bodega, referring to the attic, referring to Sam and Yaba. They're not. They're inhumane. They have no conscience. Yeah. Once again, there is a vast difference between calling someone fat or ugly or calling someone a predator or a PDF. I think that should be obvious. The differences should be obvious. Some of you may not like Gigi and or Hussy, and that's fine. I'll say that, yeah, that's fine. I'm not asking you to like them. But all I'm asking for you all is to think about what I am trying to convey here in this video. While being called fat or ugly is nasty, and indeed, yes, it has led to some of the more mentally unstable down some very dark, desperate paths. It does not have the real life implications as calling someone something as contentious with no proof, such as a PDF or predator. The reason should be obvious, but here goes anyway. For openers, PDF, you all know what that means, is one of those crimes, according to society, where you're guilty until proven innocent. Unlike the rest of the otherwise justice system, where it's vice versa, where you're innocent until proven guilty. And I honestly get that. As somebody who worked in an organization assisting frontline social workers helping at-risk kids, protection of children in society must be tantamount. A basic shooting first and ask questions later kind of thing. In this case, the damage is already done by the time they or anyone is proven innocent. One thing HR specialists or employers or even deans of admissions committees at universities look at is your online activity. Once again, they're not even looking at LinkedIn, as it is a business networking site where everybody puts their best foot forward. Employers, HR, deans, school administrators want to catch candidates with their proverbial pants down, so to speak. So they will do a Google search. They will look for all social media activity, even on inactive accounts. And a lot of them would have AI even that might do the Google searching for them with the scan and score software. They want to know who you are outside of a job. They want to know who you are. Do you best represent the image for their company? Perfectly qualified people don't get jobs simply because they don't follow a certain company image or they don't hold the party line, so to speak. Now, imagine someone like Gigi who has a career to worry about. He is an openly gay man in his 40s who has worked very hard for everything he has. And he has at least another 20 years of working life ahead before retirement, give or take. That is indeed significant. From what I've seen and read about from my humble Montreal corner, Florida is mainly a socially conservative state, depending where you live, obviously, but mainly. Okay. It is the home of Ron DeSantis, after all. Yes, yes, yes. Many people do share Begsy's belief that gay men are indeed child you-know-whats. Thus, it puts a target on Gigi's back. Everywhere he goes, he may have to look behind his shoulder. And that's no way to live for anyone. Worse, he has a career in real life to worry about. Many employers' practices include not only conducting background checks on potentially new candidates, but many conduct routine background checks, namely digital footprint and criminal back checks on their existing employees. Look at Klonka as an example. As a former member of the Washington, D.C. press corps, as she says, it looks like she was subject to routine back checks. I suspect that's why her career came to a crumbling and such a sad end. But I digress. I know where I worked, not only were we subjected to background checks before being hired, but we continued to be subjected to them every 4 years. Yep, exactly. Now imagine they, employers, or even his current HR, conducted his back check or routine back check. They Google his real government name. And the first thing, or even by scrolling, they find his name attached to terms like PDF or predator. Ask yourselves this. If you're an HR or a dean to an admissions committee or an employer, would you even consider interviewing, even a first interview, a phone interview, to someone attached to those terms in a Google search? I'm going to guess probably not. They're not going to investigate further. They have no time. They have short attention spans. They live in a world where they do not even read people's resumes, CVs, depending on where you live. It's basically the same thing. Those are all passed through AI now, through also scan and score software. For those who are not familiar, scan and score basically, it's AI and it has an algorithm that scores buzzwords, mainly pertaining to the position to be filled. And some have higher scores than others. Now, each resume, CV is scores. Only those with the highest scores, according to the software, get considered for a phone call. Everything else is scrapped without them reading it. So with that, Gigi was still a good 20 years before even eligible for retirement is rendered unemployable. He would not be able to earn a living because of those sociopaths continuing to go off half-baked, calling him a PDF. In the case of Hussy, while having no career in real life that I know about, but again, if I'm wrong, let me know, and living in a more socially liberal state and city, he could still have a target on his back, especially when he goes out for a night on the town where he does at least sometimes don his signature wigs and lipstick. So where am I going with all this? Where do we go? And at what point do we stop and say, this is enough? This is not just internet insult exchanges anymore, but this is downright dark and has real lifelong consequences. From where I sit, the only remedy is to stand up to them, use whatever means necessary, attempt to deter them, end this behavior once and for all. I suppose getting a retraction would be too much, but hence this is why court might be a good remedy for this, probably the only potential remedy. So in this case, slander and libel suits in court. Even if Begsy or the rest of them don't have a pot to piss in, you still go after them for no other reason but to put an end to the nightmare. Muzzle them, shut them up, but not before they issue some kind of retraction to the whole GG and Hussy or PDFs. Now, even though the damage is probably done by them, the idea of Begsy potentially being forced to make some kind of retraction might mitigate some of the damage. Don't know until you try, right? I know some of you may disagree with employers or school administrators looking at your social media footprint, but I personally think it's an important tool today. That's why I always say, rule of thumb, whatever you post, don't post what you wouldn't tell your mother. Let's put it that way. If I were an HR specialist or a school administrator, I'd probably be looking at their social media footprint too. I think most of you in that position would do that too. Why? Because it's a convenient tool and you have other things to do. You're busy. I've always said this. I'm retired now. I have no one to impress anymore. I don't have a job or a career to worry about. I'm not trying to go back to school. No, and thus I have no one to answer to. If you ask me, that's the best position for me to be in. No one to answer to. If I were still working, you would not find me on this corner of the internet. Never. Maybe you'd find me burning food on a non-cooking channel like Kay's Cooking, but no, certainly no drama, unless, well, the most drama you might see me doing is setting my kitchen on fire, but that's about it. For those who remember the old days, remember Rose's ranting? She was in Amberlynn Reed Reactor 2. She was a physiotherapist somewhere. Let's remember why Rose is ranting left, and I covered that briefly as well in my Young Dumb Honey Bun video. And it's at the beginning. It's at the very beginning, you'll see. Which brings us to today, watching the Bodega crow about the whole thing. I've been somewhat out of the loop on this one because of health reasons, as many already know. I just simply cannot sit for long periods of time to sift through all of it. So at times, I ask for the Cliff Notes version from people I trust. This to say, I will try piecing this to the best of my own understanding. Please feel free to correct me in comments below. As many know, I am open to being corrected, and I will admit as such. According to my own understanding, the TRO is not granted to Hussy and Gigi with regards to Columbine AK because the plaintiffs were no-shows. Now, if that's true, that would mean it's a default judgment. And still, there is the actual suit to go through. So I don't see why Columbine is crowing. I don't think this is a victory at all. It is also to my understanding that the reason there were no shows was that their own attorneys did not file the correct paperwork or something like that for Zoom hearings for Hussy and Gigi, who live nowhere near the state of Maryland where Columbine AK lives. Hussy and Gigi, I hope they change their attorneys for the rest of this journey and they continue to pursue it. Because if all that I'm saying here is true, it sounds like legal incompetence at best. If they couldn't handle simple paperwork for a TRO hearing, how bad are they going to be for the actual suit when things get messier and more arduous and tedious? I hope Gigi, he won't, I'm sure, but I hope he reconsiders pursuing Begsy, as he was the instigator of this whole Gigi is a PDF mess. He really was. And again, it would not be unreasonable for people like a judge or an attorney, or if there's a jury, members of a jury, it would not be unreasonable for them to make the connection that the reason that Columbine and the traffic and Sam Yaba go after them, and of course, who could forget Alex Shitterqueef? Yeah, her too. Yeah, it's not unreasonable. It wouldn't be unreasonable for someone like a juror or an attorney or a judge to connect the dots here, to connect from Begsy to the Bodega, and ask the question: would the Bodega pursue this particular avenue had it not been for Begsy? As distasteful as this may be, the whole lawsuits thing, it appears to be the only remedy and deterrent to such slander and defamation. I know it didn't stop Begsy and Klonka, but maybe this time it will. While they're being sued for breach of contract by Hussy. Eventually something has to give, right? As stressful and long, arduous, and expensive that these type of suits may be for Gigi, look at it this way. Can you really put a price on your vocational and professional future? Can you really put a price on your own personal safety? I would argue that life would be more miserable and more difficult, maybe even more certainly more precarious, if one like Gigi were rendered unemployable because of being called a PDF ad nauseum. It's something to definitely think about at the very least. And that is all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming. Again, my Young Dumb Honey Bun video will be linked in the pinned comment below. Have a good afternoon. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And always remember, if there is somebody in your midst who is vulnerable or at risk, please take the time to give them a call, check in on them. And sometimes that's all it takes to make all the difference in their world. And don't call people PDFs or anything like the equivalent without proof. Okay, good afternoon.